Mr. Bean was just who I was. I still find him funny, and I think I can still perform him, you know, dye my hair, and I'm off.
I do think Rowan is a genius.
They're the university boys, and I was the secondary school kid. You know, rough it up a bit.
I had the 7th most recognisable face in the world.
Just watch me now. Just watch me now. I got something for you.
He is also, in my opinion, the greatest clown of our lifetime.
At 8 p.m. on New Year's Day, ITV broadcast a pilot for a new comedy sketch show starring Rowan Atkinson, simply entitled Mr. Bean.
ITV were looking for one half-hour show to fill this one gap in the schedule, and ours was the only one that seemed to be about. And it was just a complete fluke, really, that the first time it was shown was at 8 o'clock, immediately after Coronation Street. It was put in this prime spot.
When it was presented to the British public, it was so mainstream that it never occurred to people that what they were watching was a sort of unique bit of genius by an irreplaceable comedian. They just thought, oh, here's a big, popular show.
This first episode was made up of 3 sketches.
Church sketch was the first Mr. Bean sketch, with Richard Briers playing the guy that, unfortunately for him, I'm next to. Just watching a guy trying to stay awake, and he's failing. And it's fun just to watch it in real time. The longer it takes for him to slowly fall asleep in his own lap, it becomes funnier.
The great joy of these was the rehearsal of them, and they didn't take very long. We had an idea, it seemed rich, and we would just sit in a room and say, well, what's the next thing that could happen with the resources that we've got? So we've got a hymn book. He could have something in the pockets of his jacket. There'll be a hymn. And we just worked it out communally. Probably church took, you know, an hour. Row has this tremendous ability, once he's got something that's funny, never to forget it.
You know, really lucky to have met Richard all those years ago when we were students. Really lucky.
Well, Rowan and I turned up at a sketch writing club in Oxford, and I thought that Rowan was a stuffed toy because he didn't say anything at all for the first 3 meetings. And then we were asked to submit some material, and he stood up and did 2 sketches, and I thought, oh, no, he's a genius. That's awkward.
I actually met Rowan in my first hour at university. I thought I'd heard there might be like a comedy review group. So I went to the desk and said, look, I do music and I'd love to maybe help out. And the guy at the desk was Rowan. So he said, well, OK, someone will come and see you. And Richard came around and said, well, we're doing a show in 3 weeks. Do you want to do the music? So I said, yes.
It really was a group of friends laughing at Rowan, you know, pulling faces.
We called it a one-man show. That'll be Richard, myself, and Rowan, which is 3 people. It started to be more and more about Rowan, really, because everything he did, an audience would just hang on what he was doing.
I mean, Mr. Bean was created for theatre, for the comedy show that Richard and I used to do. We started to create these purely visual sketches. If I had to tell a story entirely visually, I just naturally became this character. So Mr. Bean was just who I was when denied verbal expression. I think he's a funny idea, you know. He's absurd, but he makes me laugh.
The sketches they created for the theatre would become the 3 sketches in the first episode of Mr. Bean.
It hadn't occurred to us that there was a universal character. One was a kind of bloke who goes to church a lot. One was some awkward guy with some swimming trunks. The other one was a younger guy who was cheating in an exam. When we thought, let's do this TV show with whatever it was, 3 of them in it, we thought, oh, we better wear the same costume.
What was usually funny was just the process of how he gets out of a difficult situation or how he gets into a difficult situation.
Done your revision? Oh, yes. I've concentrated on trigonometry.
I've done calculus mainly.
Oh. I believe they concentrated on calculus last year.
Oh, dear.
Quiet, ladies and gentlemen, please. The exam starts now.
Bodily expression, particularly with Mr. Bean, is so very, very important. It's sort of screaming at you, you know. There may be no words, but you're being shouted at, I think, very loudly by the bodily expression. The word compelling is quite good because I think that's what draws you into a lot of Mr. Bean sketches.
You only had to have the starting point of the idea. He gets locked out of his room, or he's going to a swimming pool or something like that, and then you could be pretty confident that we would be able to make it work.
With those who answer the green calculus papers, please put them in the green box. And those who answer the white trigonometry papers, please put them in the white box.
What I've always done on the Mr. Beans is, as it were, I've done the charcoal outline, and then Rowan adds all the colour and the texture, and I laugh at him while he's doing it.
I said stop writing. Will you stop writing?
It is 30 years since the first Mr. Bean was shown on British television, and it became an instant hit. Between 1990 and 1995, the team went on to produce 14 episodes in total.
I didn't know until this moment that there were only 14. I thought there were probably 114, and that Rowan had been coining it in for years and years, making this never-ending flow of Mr. Beans.
We did the other 14 episodes in dribs and drabs. We didn't make 14 at once. We made 2, and then we made 3 more, and then we made 1 more, and then we made 4 more, and eventually we got to this rather paltry sum of 14. They were always given a sort of prime spot and earned their keep there. And suddenly, you know, people realised that visual comedy could actually hold a large audience.
After the overnight success of episode 1, the team was in need of new material, and comedy writer Robin Driscoll was hired.
In your own time, sir. No rush.
He would also feature in various sketches as a straight man to Rowan.
I would say in the story of Mr. Bean, it's Rowan, Robin, and then possibly me. I was thinking, in a way, Rowan and I did the obvious ones. We got the low-hanging fruit. And what was brilliant about Robin is that he's just kept, as it were, squeezing the lemon, finding new things, finding different ways, taking a little thread, be it to do with a car or with the teddy or anything like that.
My agent rang and said that they were going to commission a bunch of writers just to send in some scripts to see if any of us could write for the show. And I just wrote a stack like that. Richard and Rowan called me in and said, "We'd love you to join us." They're the university boys, the Oxford boys, and I was the secondary school kid. Yeah, I was the last in the team, you know, rough it up a bit. One of the sketches was one that I'd actually submitted, you know, trying to get the job, and it was being sat in an armchair on top of the Mini. And I just thought, no, that cost too much, they'll never do that. And I watched it the other day and I thought, well, it's quite good, isn't it, really?
A little lap belt, I think, is holding me in, I think. That is the huge difference between filming 30 years ago and filming now. Basically, we did everything for real, and I so preferred that. I'm sorry to have to tell you that there is a man hidden in the car with a small video screen doing the donkey work. But still, they're stunts. Even in that sketch, the sound of a Mini disappearing into the back of a removal van into a pile of mattresses, you know, what is that sound? And it was mainly... I like the little moment when he comes back into his room and he blows some of the feathers out of his mouth.
You had other members of the crew often, you know, whispering to me ideas. One of the set hands just came up to me and he just went and puffed out a load of feathers.
I like that. I'd forgotten that joke. It's rather sweet. The scripts of purely visual comedy, non-verbal comedy, are sort of dull as ditchwater. You know, they're dull to read and they're dull to deal with. So it's actually much more fun just to have a one-line idea. And then to be sort of semi-improvising, and then Richard would be there very diligently, or Robin, just, you know, writing down what I was doing, and then at least I could remember.
The simpler it is, the more extraordinary Rowan is. We set such small boundaries because we were thinking almost in terms of theatre rather than in terms of what you can set up with a camera.
I'm a great believer that you've got to sit back, you've got to shoot things wide so you can see as much of the body as you can at any one time. And you get this feeling that you are trapped in that room with Mr. Bean. You're being forced to watch him in this very voyeuristic rather embarrassing way, and it sort of generates a laughter. I think it does. Just frame it and look at it and stay there and let the action play out.
If you want a masterclass in physical comedy, I would recommend that you look at the Queen Mother gag.
You join us as the royal car winds its way to the front entrance of the Odeon Cinema.
It's the perfect setup for Mr. Bean, a long line of people about to do something or expectant about something, and then you just kind of stick him in the middle.
Yes, the funny thing about this is that it was originally conceived and supposed to be the Queen Mother. And of course what happened is, the Queen Mother got older and the Queen got older and the Queen started to look like the Queen Mother. And so everyone now assumes it's the Queen that Mr. Bean is meeting, but that was never the intention. It was supposed to be the Queen Mother.
And that man on the left there is a very, very handsome, younger version of me.
I was put into that scene as a last-minute thing. Someone else was going to do it, and I don't know what happened, but it was a last-minute insertion of Matilda.
Clearly, Mr. Bean knows that this is a very formal occasion and you're supposed to behave like an adult and you're supposed to stand in line and wear the right clothing, and he's got all dressed up. He feels as though he's done everything he could possibly do to fit in with the conventions of polite society.
The expectation and the payoffs that build throughout that scene, I thought was just amazingly clever.
I had this idea for the one with the Queen, and I stood in my living room, I put on a suit, and I basically stood still for an hour, thinking, what might I have? And then I'd take my 7 ideas, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, into the rehearsal room with Rowan, and then they would turn into, 15.
The costume department put dental floss inside the lace so that Rowan could actually see it, this thing at the back, and just pull it. And then when I leant forward to look for the Queen Mother, it just flopped down. I'm on dirty look number 7 right now.
It's very silly, his fingers sticking out the trousers. Very, very silly.
Oh, yeah. Nothing too low.
I like that with comedy, when you build up to something really very shocking and surprising. Oh, yeah, it wasn't just thrown together. We tried to make it work.
Matilda Ziegler was subsequently cast as Irma Gobb, Mr. Bean's girlfriend, and was the show's only returning character.
Irma's character, I'm so pleased to say, was actively encouraged to be a bit sort of stroppy. They were equally self-centred, which is why I thought they came together really well. He met his match.
No! Matilda Ziegler has got a fantastic deadpan. All the life drains from her body, deliberately becoming part of the background. Except when he goes blank and then it's your turn.
The last episode Irma appeared in was Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean. It was watched by 19 million viewers.
Christmas shopping is going on, and Mr. Bean accidentally gets given a baton to conduct the Salvation Army band that's playing carols. Now, you could do that one way, which is just chaos, but what we wanted to do was something much more precise. And the delight, I think, is seeing that work itself out and the fantastic precision and beauty of his physical comedy.
So there were 2 turkeys. One of them was absolutely brilliant, but not quite right. It was smaller. And then on the day, this thing arrived.
I thought of the idea for the turkey on a Christmas day. Because I was shoving stuff into a turkey, and then I just thought, oh.
And just that moment when he rises up into shot, you think, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Mr. Bean walking around with the turkey on his head looks like an alien creature from another place. There's something... He came from somewhere else.
Are you all right in there?
Yeah, it's fine, thank you.
Christ alive, if someone came down from Mars and saw this, they would destroy the planet, wouldn't they? The catchphrase of all the rehearsals was, will they get it in Egypt? The idea was that it had to be something that every person in the world would get.
Within 3 years of the first television show,
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean had become a global sensation.
I've never been to Canada before, and it's absolutely splendid.
Some strange survey declared that I had the 7th most recognisable face in the world. And you sort of think, that is odd.
Our friend, Mr. Bean.
Sorry, Eric.
Globally, I mean, I think we sold, I don't know how many television markets there are, 180 or something. We've sold in 180. So he became very, very, very globally famous.
You know, the internationalist thing means that people are certainly going to enjoy Mr. Bean without speaking any particular language. I remember a video signing, and there were policemen on horseback dispelling the crowds, and there was an extraordinary turnout.
I remember having this arch of policemen allowing us to get out the back of the building into a car and zoom off, and I thought, this is fun. And Rowan getting in the back saying, I'm hating every minute of this. Because he doesn't hanker after that sort of adulation, where I thought it was an absolute riot. Well, it almost was a riot.
One of the things I love about Mr. Bean and its success is the strange fact that it's so English and at the same time be so completely international.
It's odd how such an inherently selfish and self-centered person can generate affection in people.
Rupert. Hubert. Very kind.
The likability of Mr. Bean, I think, is one of his charms.
I suppose it's the sympathy or the empathy that you have for children, finding it very difficult to contain his excitement. He just gets it slightly wrong.
Happy New Year! Goodness me. Doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself?
Not easy company.
Good night, take us some company.
An awful lot of people will say to me, wouldn't it be fun to have dinner with Mr. Bean? And you think, no, you don't want to be doing that. He would ruin your evening. He's just got that sort of tension between conformity.
Is everything all right, sir?
Oh, yes.
Are you sure?
Oh, yes.
And non-conformity, which I think actually is inside me a bit. That fight that Bean has between doing what you're supposed to do and doing what he wants to do. The desire to challenge and to undermine and to be silly and to not do what the people expect you to do. And that's definitely a big part of me.
It's a very interesting juxtaposition, but the more you know him, the more Mr. Bean sort of makes sense, because in a way, there's an element of Rowan, the quite lonely schoolboy who people didn't talk to, existing in a silent world, you know, in that character.
It was myself and a friend of mine who used to run a thing called the Sixth Form Film Society when we were at school. And this was just an excuse to get a whole lot of, you know, weird and arty films and enjoy them really for ourselves. And if anyone else, you know, wanted to watch them, then fine. And I remember getting Jacques Taty's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday and being so inspired by it.
Yeah, Rowan used to bang on about Jacques Tati a bit.
The comedy that I'd seen had been mostly verbal rather than visual. And it was just a moment of revelation for me. It just opened up a world that I'd never seen before, really, of a sort of a very particular kind of comedy, which took its time. That, I think, is a feature, actually, of the Mr. Bean live-action TV, is that the comedy actually is never in a rush.
Morning. Do sit down. Sure.
We had the extremely good Richard Wilson playing the dentist.
When I met Rowan for the first time, quiet farmer's son, you know, studying chemical engineering, that couldn't have been further from this extraordinary outpouring when he just uses all his physical skills to be a great silent comedian.
I mean, he is very, very physically skilled. He makes it look easy. Well, he doesn't. He makes it look difficult for the character, but not for him.
And you see how well executed that is. To get the timing of that right is not easy. It's all, in a sense, so very predictable and yet so gloriously funny.
Mr. Bean is in a dentist's chair, and he somehow has managed to contrive to render unconscious the dentist that he turned up to see. Then he's got to do it himself. You know, he's got to get to the same place, but via a different route. And it involves his own ingenuity. and working out mechanically how the problem could be solved. That's my brain at work, I'm afraid.
I think the truth of the matter is, Mr. Bean was huge fun to rehearse, quite a lot of fun to perform in the theatre, and quite hard to film.
Excuse us a minute. Susie!
No, not at all. Yeah? Yeah, Saturday. Yeah.
Sorry, look, can I just leave Jamie here with you for a moment? I mean, I've left my purse in the shop back there. But just give him a good haircut, will you? Be good, Jamie.
The thing you would find surprising about watching Rowan rehearse some of these sketches is how the atmosphere is really about detail.
Sorry to stop, but I have a feeling that if this happened, that Bean would, some normal people would say, hang on a minute, he'll be back in a second and I'm first. You know what I mean?
He will want to do something again and again and again until he's absolutely sure that he's got it right.
Just popped out for lunch.
Me too. Nothing like a quick sandwich.
No, absolutely.
When you're actually on the studio floor trying to make the joke work and do what I'm supposed to be good at, which is to perform and make things work, that's when it just gets very, very stressful.
Rowan is a perfectionist. He's constantly taking in, is that lighting right? Is that chair the right chair? Is there a draft? No, I don't think there's a draft. And all that is going on inside him.
It's part of that perfectionism that means that you never lose a laugh. So wherever there is a potential funny moment, the audience will see it.
People say, oh, it's so marvellous because he's a perfectionist, you know. And I don't regard her perfectionism as a particularly admirable quality. I think it's more a disease than a quality because it's very debilitating. It's very draining.
My flexible friend.
I didn't feel the burden to be funny on the Blackadder, whereas something like Bean, it does tend to come down to me and my performance.
You'd definitely get letters now if you did that. You can't kill fish like that, even if they are rubber. That probably would have taken about 30 takes. I mean, he certainly didn't do it first time.
Sometimes I've just got to get to the point when literally I can't be bothered to do any more takes. And maybe, you know, take 18 is better than take 5. But usually it isn't.
There's definitely a number of looks that, as a straight man, you have to make sure you don't double up on. So there's a sort of look askance, and the look surprised, and the look disapproving, and you have to kind of, which one shall I use here? 7A. I'll use condescending.
After 5 years of continuing success,
Good night.
Goodnight, Mr. Bean was the last episode to be made for television.
I felt towards the end of the 14 episodes that we made that I felt as though we'd sort of done it. You know, not done the character necessarily, but done the TV world. And of course, it was after that that we made the first movie.
Are you feeling lucky, punk? Anything you want.
7 years after Mr. Bean was first shown on TV, Bean, the ultimate disaster movie, was released, followed by Mr. Bean's Holiday.
You speak very good French.
Gracias.
Between them, they took $500 million at the box office.
She call me Mr. Bombastic, tell me fantastic. Touch me on me box, she says I'm Mr. Roll.
When we made the Bean movie in 1996, we decided to plagiarise ourselves and use the turkey on the head joke again. And also shooting in the 90s was Friends, the famous American sitcom, and they stole the joke.
Oh my God!
And of course, when it came out in the movie, everyone said, oh, well, of course, they stole that from Friends.
I'm absolutely dazzled by the Friends thing. I only saw it the other day. I literally can't believe what happened there. Bizarre. Bizarre.
But in the end, you know, you can't steal jokes. Jokes are there to be stolen or to inspire others. We made him talk a lot in the first Mr. Bean movie. You know, we decided that he had to talk a lot in order to tell our story. It's sort of like finding another aspect to him, and I like the way he talks.
Mr. Gerson, yes. He's just here in the shower with me.
After the success of the TV shows and films, Mr. Bean made a surprising move to a new audience.
Phew. Now, to find my card. How hard can it be?
When in 2002, Rowan became the voice of Mr. Bean for a children's animation series.
When it came to contriving an animated series for Mr. Bean, it wasn't conceptually that big a shift.
Oh, a bargain bucket.
My relationship with the animation is the single business deal of which I am most proud, because Ro rang me up and said, you know, we've got this idea, we should do an animation of Mr. Bean. And it was a quick phone call, and I remember saying I wouldn't if I were you. And I've been receiving checks for it ever since.
I find that I can't do the voice, you know, without you know, doing the face. It has to, yeah, the two have to go together. You know, that I tend to very quickly go into.
That sort of switch has to be switched before he becomes that strange entity.
Go on, move, you stupid. Get down.
So you've never seen him in the booth? I've never seen him in the booth.
Oh no! Andy! Oh, good. Come on! Oh, Teddy.
That is hilarious. That's even worse than I thought. Poor Ro. Honestly, I'm glad he's getting paid.
You know, I think if ever they made a cartoon about the adventures of Baldric and it was as good as the cartoon of Mr. Bean, I would be quite happy with that. I think most of us forget quite how gloomy the nation was in the run-up to the London Olympics. So when the opening ceremony happened, I think we were all sitting there, go on then, prove something to me.
The London Symphony Orchestra are going to play Chariots of Fire. Now, that's just poetry, isn't it, for any Olympian? So, you know, the violin started, it was amazing. And so you're kind of just waiting for that synthesized bit to come in. Dun, 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 dun. We saw the finger, an arm, and then you saw Mr. Bean. Just genius. I mean, I just remember the whole stadium erupting, and that was an international stadium.
My heart almost burst when they cut to Rowan, and in some way it's symbolising something about the glorious daftness of our nation. Bosh!
Beckham, Bean and Bond in one opening ceremony. Brilliant.
Quite early on, in the first couple of years, we began developing specifically musical sketches. We later did a sketch, for example, where the whole stage was full of an invisible drum kit. And I suppose the legacy of those sketches ended up in its perhaps finest moment at the opening of the Olympic Games in 2012.
He was never intended to be Mr. Bean, particularly. He was just a guy in an orchestra that Richard and I used to do on stage. I mean, obviously because it was me and because I was, trying to be funny without words. Unsurprisingly, I looked remarkably similar in terms of his body language and his general demeanour to Mr. Bean. It was never meant to be. It's just me being silly.
And yet, when you go on YouTube, and an astonishing amount of people have watched it, it says on the bottom, Mr. Bean at the Olympics.
Even though you're in front of endless billions out there watching on TV, bring it all down to the job that you're doing, which is basically that.
It wasn't quite perfect when he took a picture of the audience. 60,000 people laughing at him. 1.2 billion people enjoying it, and fundamentally Rose just a bit annoyed about the fact that the flash didn't go off.
It was an enlightened invention. Well done, Rowan and Richard.
I suppose I always had faith in its longevity as an idea, because I thought the idea was broad and simple. This idea of a childlike figure just doing silly things.
The fact that it's lasted is not, to me, much more surprising than the fact that, Buster Keaton has lasted or Charlie Chaplin has lasted. So if anything was going to last of our work, it would probably be Mr. Bean. There's a scene in Four Weddings, which was originally a Mr. Bean sketch in my mind. It's the one where Hugh Grant's in a room and then a couple come in and, do what couples do, and he has to hide in a cupboard.
Found it.
Hugh's performance isn't as funny as Rowan's would have been.
Now, future Mr. Bean.
And I mean, he'd be older. There's no doubt about that.
Old Bean is what we're now thinking of doing. He's always had a kind of grumpy selfishness, which might adapt well.
I still like him. I suppose what I mean is I still find him funny, and I think I can still perform him.
We've had some meetings and some discussions and some sort of mini rehearsals where we do exactly what we used to do before.
I hope it happens, and then there'll be another opportunity to see the original Mr. Bean in his original setting.
Dye my hair, and I'm off. I think, you must never say never.
I mean, it's just been an honour in my life to have, worked with someone who's that, has got that basic brilliance. I think of Rowan as a brother, really.
Yeah, something like that.
If you're ready, we can, Hello? Hello?